Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. Apologies that this video wasn't up yesterday, but as I mentioned during my Steven Universe vlog, Friday was not a good day for me mentally, and I honestly did not feel up to doing the Friday vlog at that point. I thought that I thought my negative attitude would just kind of infect the vlog, and quite frankly, even if I do enjoy doing the vlogs, I just felt like I just would have been melancholy and or angry and bitter. So I decided to push the Friday vlog to Saturday, and likewise to make sure I didn't have two vlogs in one day, I decided to push the Saturday vlog to today. So just letting you know about that. Just I wanted to let you know and I just apologize for that. And I'm gonna give a heads up. This is not gonna be the last time I do this month, though. I'll talk about that right before it happens. So there you go. But either way, today it's time we finally conclude our discussion on the Spider-Woman tie-ins to Spider-Verse as we take a look at Spider-Woman Volume 5, Number 4. Now, last time on Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, was tasked with infiltrating the Inheritor's homeworld to gather intel for the Spider Army. While she was able to successfully slip in without any notice, since her counterpart was essentially a personal consort to Moreland and the Inheritors, unfortunately, that position also kind of put her very close to Moreland, and sadly, she was very much not doing well in keeping him occupied, as her attitude did not match up with her Loomworld counterparts, and it almost caused her cover to get blown. Thankfully, she was able to distract Moreland with a bit of her pheromone powers and the excuse of needing to use the bathroom, and so she was able to run off. And after punching out Mary Jane in the face, the Loomworld Mary Jane, who was head of security, she managed to reach the web of the Master Weaver, who was able to give her the scrolls that she passed along to the Spider Army. Seeing no reason to further stay at the Great Hall, she wound up ditching it, which she said her cover was blown, which I kind of wrote off of originally, but I guess when Mary Jane woke up, she would probably say, hey, Jessica Drew punched me out, maybe we should look into that, but whatever, either way, she decided to ditch the Great Hall, and her plan was essentially just to wait out the war with Namor and with Pirate Namor and his band of merry things. But sadly, when she went out there, she encountered a problem. For you see, when she replaced her counterpart, she wound up giving her body to Pirate Namor and his crew. And well, it turns out in the time between then and now, Loomworld Jessica managed to work her way up and become the Pirate Queen of Namor's crew. Thanking her counterpart for getting her into this position, though saying that she still has to let her crew gut her because, keeping up appearances. Thankfully, before the crew can do anything to Jessica, she ends up getting some help from Cindy Moon, aka Silk, and Spider-Gwen. And from there, the story just kind of folded back into Spider-Verse as they fought off the crew, and eventually had to go back into Loomworld and deal with the fallout from the Spider War, and so on and so forth. So, there you go. But, so, if the story for the Spider-Woman tie-ins was resolved in the pages of the Spider-Verse storyline, well, what exactly is this issue about? Well, put simply, it's an epilogue. Much like issue 15 of Amazing Spider-Man, this one essentially offers a kind of follow-up to Jessica Drew after the events of Spider-Verse. And put simply, she's pretty much just picking up the pieces that were left behind, because you see, when you have a world like Loomworld that's a patchwork of all these conquered worlds with all these different societies whose only real who basically only tolerate each other because they're afraid of comeuppance from these all powerful beings that conquered them. Well, when they go, it's going to leave a pretty big power vacuum. And unfortunately, with the Inheritors now trapped on Earth 3145, these various societies are now just duking it out to see who can be on top. Which is where Jessica comes into the fray, because she believes that in order to keep all these different societies under control, they need a leader, and well, who better than her Loomworld counterpart, who, yes, may be a bitch, but ultimately the people do love her, and she thinks that she can actually use that to her advantage and get all the people of Loomworld to essentially follow under her. As such, she ends up going out to Loomworld Jessica's pirate ship, which we do end up seeing. The issue actually starts with her, and we see that she's definitely kind of more fit into the role more, as she now wakes up listening to yoga, gets fed drinks, gets foot massages from Pirate Namor, and so on and so forth. So everything does seem to be her life is pretty much good, but of course that's when Jessica shows up, and thankfully she didn't come alone, as she employed the help of three other Spider Girls, in this case Anya Corazon, Spider-Gwen, and Silk. Silk. As such, she fills her Loomworld counterpart in on what happened to Loomworld after Spider Verse with the Battle of the Inheritors and so forth. But Loomworld Jessica really does not care. She pretty much just thinks she pretty much did not have any love lost for any of them. She did not care. She was like in her like as we kind of saw in issue 3 of Spider-Woman. It's clear that Loomworld Jessica was really just doing whatever she could to survive, and she considered this place a hellhole. She didn't want to be here, and she doesn't like it here. The only reason why she did what she did was because, well, it was the best way to keep her alive and to keep her in comfort. So she just kind of sucked up to whoever she had to suck up to, and now that she doesn't have to, she doesn't give a shit about any of these people. She's her own person now. She's living out on the sea. Screw the rest of them. They can blow themselves up for all she cares. She's happy, and she does not care, and she does not give a damn about any of their safety. But of course, this does end up kind of disgusting the main universe Jessica, because, well, imagine if you saw that version of yourself. You're a hero who likes helping others, and then you see a version of yourself who just pretty much goes, fuck them, who cares? Which does lead to a little bit of an argument between them, but it does kind of end with Loomworld Jessica saying, what, so you say because I'm free now I should just go and fight for those people? To which Jessica responds, oh no, you couldn't fight if you tried. No. I'm not telling you to go fight for those people. I'm telling you to lead them. And the instant Loomworld Jessica hears that, she's like, oh, well that changes things then. And so she decides to concede to her main universe counterpart's demands, giving them access to her crew and having them and Jessica and the spider ladies that Jessica brought with them go on to shore Loomworld and just start essentially calming down the crowds and getting them all under control. Though Jessica sadly has to stay behind because, well, she doesn't want to confuse the crowd since, well, her Loomworld counterpart can't throw a punch to save her life, and if Jessica was down there kicking ass, and maybe people wonder, why can't you fight anymore? But put simply, things do end up going well things end up going well. The Spider Ladies are able to calm the crowd, everybody's under control, and ultimately Loomworld Jessica is able to appoint herself as the new leader of Loomworld, telling them she may not know what a free Loomworld may look like, but she hopes that she'll be able to see it with everybody else by her side, and yada 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 blah blah blah. Either way, the job is done, Loomworld is safe, and so while the Spider Ladies comment and ask Jessica how it feels to see evil her rallying the people to her cause, well, Jessica only responds is, it's like walking naked through a funhouse. And a jacked up mirror is still just a mirror, which I'll get to my thoughts on that later, but I think it's a good line. Either way, the Spider Ladies really have no point of being here anymore, and so they end up opening a portal and leaving, either to which depending on when this takes place in Spider-Verse, either has them going back to the Great Hall so they can send all the various Spider people back to their respective universes, or they're just going back to their respective universes. Well, except in Anya's case. Either way, she goes back to the Great Hall since she decided to stay with Billy. But either way, yeah. War over, Loomworld's under control, but so now what? Well, we still got some stuff with Jessica, as we see, and basically we cut back to Earth 616, the main Marvel universe, 3 days after the event, and we see that Jessica is just calmed down and kind of going through the day-to-day life. In this case, we see her and Carol Danvers, aka the current Captain Marvel, as they're just walking out of a coffee shop, Carol having a donut and Jessica having a cup of coffee. And basically, Carol just wants to know everything about the whole Spider-Verse event, about what was it like? What was it like going to all these different spider people? How do they address one another? Yada, yada, yada. And basically, Jessica is just annoyed by it, but tolerates the questions because, well, Carol's her best friend. But either way, Jessica's not just hanging out with Carol because, well, they're friends. She kind of needs Carol's support for something, and it's something that she's been contemplating for a while. And so they end up going to Avengers Tower, and while Carol doesn't know what the heck Jessica wants to do, Jessica says, that's a good thing. That's intentional, because if you knew what I was going to do, you'd try to stop me. So I just want you to stay back here in silence and give me support because you're my best friend. Which Carol does comply with, though she still wants to know exactly what's going on. Though, as they enter Avengers Tower and ditch their civilian clothes, which their civilian clothes really consisted of their superhero costumes with trench coats over them, so they end up walking by Beast and Vision, who are in the middle of a lab looking at what they think is a large moon, or at the very least they're arguing over what it is. At the very least they're arguing over whether it's a moon or not. So Basically, Carol just basically it doesn't look like it's very important, but Jessica and Carol end up leaving the room and they go to find Steve Rogers, who at this point in time in the comics was now an old man. Don't ask me why. I don't regularly read Avengers comics, so your guess is as good as mine. But either way, Jessica kind of feels a little nervous about talking to Steve, especially since now that she sees him as an old man, she just feels like she has to apologize to him at every given opportunity. But what she says she feels is important, and she does want to say something to him about. However, before she can really get a chance to open her mouth, something bursts into the room, and we soon see what the small moon that Beast and Vision were looking at was. It was an egg for a monster who begins ripping the building apart. As such, the other available superheroes begin grabbing whatever they can to start blasting at the thing. Carol blasting her with their lasers, while Jessica and Steve end up going for their own laser cannons. But through all this, Jessica still wants to talk to Steve, which, while Steve says maybe this isn't the best time, Jessica's like, oh, what? Well, you want us to talk in calm silence? Which, yeah, fair enough. Steve concedes too, but yeah, through the fight, Jessica talks about how she's been kind of thinking things over, and how she's kind of starting to wonder, and basically, she's starting to question this whole Avengers life, how big things get, how strange these get, how she's kind of getting tired of all the big events going on around her. Skull Queens, Intergalactic Wars, the Spider-Verse. She's just kind of getting her fill of it, and put simply, she's getting kind of sick of it. She's not like sick of it to the point where she wants to turn it. Sorry about this. She's not getting sick of it to the point where she wants to she wants to hang up the webs, but it's clear that she wants kind of a break, which she gets further emphasized when during the battle the monster ends up knocking Carol into Jessica as she's talking, and then stick one of its tentacles into her head and meat puppeting her, as Jessica calls it. And as such, in just pure blind rage, she ends up jumping right at the creature and just blasts it point blank with either the laser or her venom blast. Either way, it downs the creature and saves the day. But once it's done, Jessica finally spits out what she wanted to say to Steve. She quits. She's not quitting being a superhero, but she's quitting the Avengers. Basically, she just kind of wants to take a break. Like she doesn't want to give up being a superhero, but she wants to do things kind of smaller now. She wants to get back on the street, help regular people, do all these things that regular people do, meet someone who hasn't seen her punch out a god, live in an apartment that isn't made up of Iron Man suits. Basically, she just wants to have at least a semi-normal life. She doesn't want just a breaking away from all the wacky tacky shit that goes on with the Avengers and Steve. He understands. He understands completely and tells her it's okay for her to quit. But he also does tell her that once an Avenger, always an Avenger. And that if she needs them or they need her, she's always a call away. Which just basically says, yeah, you can. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And so, that, as they say, is that. Jessica and Carol end up leaving, and while Carol makes fun of Jess for quitting, so to speak, she is still being supportive of her and does want to help push her towards a better future. Though even Jess doesn't know what that future may entail. She doesn't know where she's going to live. She doesn't know where she can find these regular people that she wants to help. But she does admit that she's looking forward to finding out, and she's even considering getting a new costume, which Carol is more than happy for because apparently she hates the Spider-Woman costume. It's not a bad costume. It's pretty cool. Got a little upside-down triangle and red suit, white gloves, got some webs underneath. It's fine. It's fine. I guess maybe it's old-fashioned, but it's still fine. But either way, yeah, they just kind of go off, and basically Carol talks about how she's happy that she's getting a new costume, and at which point even Jessica's like, it's like, why are you insulting me about costumes? You're the one that used to go around with your ass cheeks out in the open. It's like, yes, used to, and when yours is used to too, then I'll stop mentioning it. And the comic ends with Jessica lamenting that maybe she needs better friends, which Carol says there's no such thing. So, alright, so my thoughts on this issue, and I guess the Spider-Woman tie-ins as a whole. I think the issue is a nice little epilogue to the story, and quite frankly, I think it's a nice little wrapping up for Jessica's character arc through the tie-ins. For one thing, I do like, which again, is a nice little thing that I like with these tie-ins, because, well, if you can't tell by the numbering of the issues, this was a new run of Spider-Woman. Basically just starting over with her character, so to speak. Basically just getting her a new comic run, and this tie-in was the opening storyline for it, which I find to be kind of a double-edged sword. If the first storyline in a new run of a character's comic is a tie-in, you kind of have that kind of can serve that can kind of come back and bite you, because imagine if you're a new reader who sees volume 1 of her that says this, and basically it's actually a tie into another story. That means you got to go pick up another comic in order to understand what the hell, all the context for what the hell's going on. But yeah, it can be annoying. But something that I like with the Spider-Woman tie-ins to Spider-Verse is how her final decision in issue 4, it feels actually built up to really well. As we've seen throughout the first 3 issues prior to this, well, Jessica was kind of at her end, as kind of at her limit throughout the storyline. She was dealing with all the pressure from taking part in this war against the Inheritors and dealing with all these different spider people, and put simply, it was getting to her a little. While she did her best to keep her eye on the ball, it's very clear that she was definitely not in her comfort zone throughout the entire story. When she was escorting Cindy and having to and trying to be the responsible one, well, she was it led to her being snippy and angry with Cindy, which again makes sense. She's in the middle of a war zone dealing with a character who's lived in a bunker for most of her life and now is finally getting her taste of action in an outside world. Of course she's going to get annoyed with her because she wants to keep her alive while she wants to go exploring. Those two personalities are going to clash, but you see the pressure getting to her even there. And then likewise when she goes to Loom World, it further puts things in perspective because she's pretty much right there in the lion's den, having to deal with the very things that are hunting the Spideys of the multiverse. And she has to play the game right, otherwise her life is pretty much forfeit. Not helped by the fact that her counterpart on Loom World is a massive bitch, and looking at her and seeing the life that she could have had if circumstances were just a little different, it gets to Jessica. You can clearly tell it gets to her. But throughout the whole thing, while she's trying to keep a level head and trying to stay stable, it's clear that all this uber strangeness and multiversal shenanigans, it's clearly getting to her more so than it would a lot of other Spideys. Basically, it's just she's getting sick of it. Basically, the pressure is just building up to her, and quite frankly, you can see that reflected throughout the story in her impatience and her getting frustrated, her trying to stay calm, only being met with another weird thing that basically makes her go, "You gotta be kidding me right now." And I like how how you can see that kind of built up through the story. You can see her temper flaring a bit, and while she tries to keep a level head for the most part, you can see her patience wearing thin a little bit at a time throughout the comic. And then likewise, what I do like is that by the end, when everything's taken care of, you can tell she's exasperated. She's tired. And it's part, which I think Spider-Verse is probably part of the reason why she finally came to the decision she did in the final issue, when she said, "I need to stop being an Avenger. I need to just calm down for a little, do some street level stuff, be a regular hero, not the one that deals with all this cosmic random bullshit. I want to just be me. I want to have my own life." Which, you know what? I like that. I like how they kind of build up to it throughout the story. I like how you see it reflected in her character. You can see how exasperated she is throughout the story, and finally taking part in Spider-Verse, seeing all these weird things, dealing with the threats they're dealing with, and again, seeing her twisted reflection in her Loom World counterpart, it makes sense why she would finally come to that conclusion and say, "You know what? I need a break. I just need to calm down from all this big world-ending shenanigans. I just need to live my own life." Again, she's not quitting being a superhero, but again, she wants things to be smaller. She wants things to be calmer now for her, which, you know what? I like that. And I think that's a good way of being an opening storyline. Again, it does kind of suffer a little because it's a tie-in to a greater event, but from a sole character point of view, I think this is a good way to start things off with her a new run, as essentially it's just her hitting the reset button on her life and just wanting a fresh start, which, you know what? Good on that. I like how they do that, and I like how it's showcased throughout the story, and I do like how it kind of sort of comes to a head when she finally makes her decision to quit. That's when they get attacked by a monster, and that's just her finally getting a chance to vent all this out and say, "You know what? This is the shit I'm talking about." I like that. I think that's actually pretty nice, and I do like how it builds up. Again, and on top of that, I do like one of the things that I do like too is seeing Jessica interacting with her Loom World counterpart. One of the things that I love about the whole multiverse thing, and part of the things that appeals to me about Spider-Verse, is just, of course, seeing a version of a character meeting another version of the same character. Because as we've showcased in Spider-Verse, there's always something unique and different about these different incarnations. They have similarities, of course, that allow them to be tied together, but at the same time, because they grew up and live in different environments, there are some noticeable changes. And likewise, we see that with the two Jessicas in the story. We have one Jessica who's very much serious-minded, no nonsense, wants to get the job done, but ultimately still has a good heart and wants to help others and do the right thing. But then likewise, you see Loomworld Jessica, a version of Jessica who was most likely ripped away from her world when it was conquered by the Inheritors, and who, in order to stay alive, had to pretty much kiss up for the favorite son of the Inheritors, make herself seem like the perfect woman for him, do whatever he wanted her to do, just so she could stay in affluence, just so she could stay in a place of comfort. And basically, and again, what we see throughout the story is that she clearly does not like her situation. She's trying to take advantage of whatever she can to stay in a good position, but her reaction at the end of the story isn't anything to go by. It's clear that she hated every minute of it. She did not she liked that she had the comfort, but she didn't like what she had to do to get it, which makes her initial "fu" to Jessica in this issue kind of makes sense. Like she said, she was living in a rat hole. She was living amongst all these people. She was essentially a prisoner of this world alongside thousands of other prisoners who the only reason they didn't riot and go nuts was because they were afraid of the people on top coming down and raining hell upon them. So now here she is in a place where she's finally free, in a position where she doesn't have to cozy up to anybody. Everybody has to cozy up to her, which, again, she kind of got on Loom World, but again, she had to cozy up to someone higher up. But so, of course, she feels happy about that. Why wouldn't she want? So it makes sense why she would say, "Screw those people. I never liked them in the first place." Again, it's harsh, but it makes sense, and I like how they portray it throughout the story. And again, you see flashes of the Jessica we know in Loomworld Jessica. You can see her snark. You can see it in her snark, her attitude, her no not her bit her the way she and main universe Jessica interact. It's just you can see little things that showcase that they are the same person, but they were both raised in different environments. One Jessica, while having a harder life, eventually found herself with people that she cared about and wanted to help. And likewise, those people helped keep her on the straight and narrow, gave her a good moral standing, and overall it led to her becoming a good person who genuinely cared about others. While this Jessica had to essentially fight for her life and did everything she could to just be the biggest rat in a cage full of them. So it makes sense why they're so different, and I like seeing the compare and contrast between them. I like seeing how Jessica tries to come to terms with how her Loomworld counterpart is going out, and even tries to essentially sway her to being more noble and just, but ultimately it doesn't, which again makes sense. And this kind of goes back to the line I mentioned earlier. A jacked up mirror is still just a mirror, which, again, I can interpret it as one of two ways. One way is that Jessica may look at her Loomworld counterpart and say that she looks ugly and misshapen and wrong from and may not be something I like looking at, but she's still me, and basically could act as kind of a warning about what Jessica could become under the right circumstances, which I'm less inclined to believe now than when I first thought of it, but it is a potential theory. But another theory, and one that I do kind of like more, is the idea that ultimately, while she may look like Jessica, may sound like Jessica, may even have the same face as her, she's not Jessica. At the end of the day, she's just a mirror. She's just a reflection. She may look fucked up, she may look weird, but ultimately that's not her. Again, I feel like it could be one or the other, that ultimately she is just... Jessica feels disgusted by her, but Jessica feels just uncomfortable around her, may not like looking at her. But at the end of the day, it's either she's just, but at the end of the day, she's not me, she's someone else, or at the end of the day, it's just me. I'm disgusted by her, but I'm disgusted by me too, which again could be which again could be kind of leading into into her ultimate decision. Again, when you see essentially worst case scenario, you might think, okay, maybe I should rein it in a little. So I like that. I think it's cool. But okay, I'm trying to think what else I kind of liked about this issue. Well, I didn't like the final fight scene. I like the conclusion with it, with her talking to Cap. And again, that does feel like a new start for her character. The action is still pretty nice, but of course, which still hampered by the artwork. But I'll get to that when I get to my overall thoughts. But just the issue itself, I think, is actually a pretty good finale. It does essentially offer it does add it puts a nice little cap on Jessica's story with her character, her journey through Loomworld, interacting with her counterpart, and ultimately opens up essentially new avenues for her to explore for her character as she leaves the Avengers and decides that she needs a fresh start. Which, yep, she does end up getting a new costume. We'll kind of be seeing it again when we get to another later storyline, but for now, it's just the beginning. But overall, I find it to be a nice ending. And as for the Spider-Woman tie-ins as a whole, I think they're enjoyable. Again, there are some factors in it that do annoy me and do get under my skin. The artwork is eh. The artwork is just weird. It's typical Greg Land off-model weirdness. Sometimes panels do not flow into one another well, and it takes a bit more context. Clues to figure out how things more go and work. And yeah, it still kind of suffers from the same Greg Landy Tracy bullshit that you normally get, and just it looks weird and uncanny and just off, and I don't care for it. I don't let again. It still makes me. I'm still questioning how Jessica was able to slip into her counterpart's place so well, because it does feel weird how she was able to easily do it, which either means that her counterpart is a spider totem as well, which makes you wonder how she got so close to the inheritors. But whatever, or perhaps. Or either Jessica or either the inheritors aren't as good at their job as they think they are, because Jessica was able to slip in when undetected, which, again, I don't know how she was able to do that, because, again, she's a spider totem. They should have been able to sense her, so I don't know. That one raises questions for me about how easily that was done. There are continuity issues between the tie-ins and the main comic, which in some cases I'm more inclined to forgive, but in some cases do feel weird. Mostly in the case of issue 4. Issue 2 and 3 I'm more forgiving of in some regards, because again, you probably had different writing teams. They probably didn't know every little detail between stories. They only knew like some general stuff. So again, it can be a problem, but I'm more forgiving there. Issue 4 though is kind of where I scratch my head, is I really have no idea where that could take place. It could take place between issues 14 and 15 of Amazing Spider-Man, and that while the Spider Army was recuperating after taking out the Inheritors, she went down and got her counterpart, or it could have happened after Spider-Verse is over, and she just went back and got Silk, Gwen, and Anya and said, "Hey, you guys want to help me with this thing? It won't take me very long." Which, again, they don't explain which one it is, but otherwise it does raise questions about where it takes place in the greater continuity of Spider-Verse. So whatever, but in terms of story, I think it's fine. I think it moves at a brisk pace. I love seeing the different environments that we see throughout the stories, like with the world with purple sand and golden New York. I thought that was unique and interesting. I liked we actually got to see more of Loomworld and how the society of Loomworld operates, especially as it's a Frankensteining of all these different societies and cultures all put together because, well, the Inheritors wanted to show off their opulence. I like seeing these different versions of characters that we know, like with Pirate Namor and, of course, Loomworld Jessica Drew, which, again, I do kind of like how that affects main universe Jessica and how they both kind of clash with each other in the final issue, which I think is cool because I always like little cautionary tales like that and when you have multiverse stories. I love the stuff with Cindy and basically how she had to deal with how her character went through in the story as she had to deal with being hunted by the Inheritors and so forth, which I guess that's another flaw. There's no real capstone on that except for her coming to save Jessica in the end of issue 3, so there you go. But otherwise, and of course, and again, like I said, the ending I think is a good way of wrapping things up for Jessica's character while also opening up new avenues for her. So, on the whole, I think the Spider-Woman tie-ins are fine. They're enjoyable. They have some great character stuff for Jessica. They've got some unique environment. I like seeing her explore these different unique environments and areas, especially with a multiversal setting in place. I love seeing I love the growth that she has. I love seeing her compare and contrast with her counterpart. I love kind of the cringe moments and so forth. The action can be mixed. That is kind of fun, and while I think the artwork is bad, there are still some good shots here and there that do make me go, okay, I'll give you that one. But again, there are major flaws. Really, are some kind of continuity issues. Artwork is still just eh. I don't know how Jessica was able to slip into her counterpart's place so well. And overall, the story is just, it's fine. It's enjoyable. Like I said, great character stuff, some nice action, some unique environments that I like seeing, some nice contrast with certain characters and when they meet themselves. Specifically Jessica, I like seeing all these unique places. I like seeing Jessica do the espionage. Overall, I think the Spider-Woman tie-ins to Spider-Verse are perfectly fine, very enjoyable. And while I'm not really while it doesn't really incline me to read more of Spider-Woman's story, it does I think offer a nice little beginning for anyone who might be interested in it. Again, another fatal flaw is that you got to read the Spider-Verse to fully understand what goes on. But at the very least, I think this is a good place to start her character off to further go off in its own direction for later storylines. So there you go. So yeah, I think that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I thank you for watching. And when we come back to the Spider-Verse retrospectives on Tuesday, well, we're going to be starting up another tie-in. Because well, in this case, we did see that there were multiple away teams, weren't there? And, well, someone had to deal with the whole inheritor clone body thing. So next time we meet, it's time we check back in with the clone crew, and as we see them deal with the inheritors and their cloning antics, as we take a look at the Scarlet Spiders miniseries. So till then, hope you have a good day, happy Mother's Day, and take care.